The restaurant buzzed with soft laughter, clinking glasses, and the gentle hum of live piano music in the corner. Waiters glided between tables carrying silver trays, their polished shoes reflecting the warm golden lights above. At a corner table, by the large glass windows that overlooked the city skyline, sat David, a man in his early 40s, dressed in a sharp navy suit that spoke of power and prestige. He was the CEO of one of the most successful firms in the city, but today, his heart wasn't focused on business deals or boardroom meetings. Today was about his daughter. Emma, only 7, sat across from him, swinging her little legs under the chair, her long brown hair falling loosely around her curious eyes. Her smile, innocent and wide, lit up the room far brighter than the chandelier above them. David's stern face, often unreadable in the corporate world, softened as he watched her study the menu with exaggerated seriousness, pretending to weigh her options like an adult. "What do you think, sweetheart?" David asked, leaning forward, a rare playfulness in his tone. "I think," Emma said slowly, tracing her finger along the words, "that I'll have the spaghetti. And maybe, chocolate cake after." David chuckled, the sound low but genuine. "Spaghetti and chocolate cake it is, and I'll have the salmon." For a moment, the world felt simple, father and daughter, enjoying a meal together, filling the space between them with laughter and small stories. It was the kind of evening David lived for now, the only thing that gave balance to the relentless pace of his career. But as the waiter walked away, Emma's bright gaze shifted past her father, toward the tall glass doors at the entrance of the restaurant. Her smile faltered, she leaned slightly forward, pressing her small palms against the edge of the table. "Daddy," she whispered. David turned his head. Standing just outside, near the edge of the restaurant's grand steps, was a woman. Her clothes were worn, her hair tangled in waves that hadn't seen care in weeks. She held her arms tightly around herself, as though the night air pierced through her very bones. In one hand, she clutched a small paper cup, the kind people used for coins. Her eyes, tired yet searching, scanned the tables inside. Emma tugged at her father's sleeve. "Daddy, she looks hungry. Can I share my food with her?" David hesitated, the question hung in the air like a challenge, tugging at the carefully built walls around his heart. He was a man who had worked for everything, who had climbed from nothing to success. He wasn't blind to suffering, he had seen it, lived through it, and forced himself to rise above it. Yet in his world now, people like the woman outside were easy to pass by, easier still to ignore. "Sweetheart," he began carefully, she's probably just resting. "Let's focus on our dinner, okay?" Emma frowned, her small hands curling into fists on the table. "But Daddy, she looks so cold and hungry. I don't think she has spaghetti, or chocolate cake." Her words, simple and sincere, pierced deeper than any boardroom debate could. David glanced back at the woman. She was thin, too thin, and though she tried to stand tall, there was a fragility in her posture that revealed more than her silence ever could. The waiter returned with steaming plates, placing them gently in front of father and daughter. The aroma filled the air, garlic, butter and rich sauce, but Emma barely touched her fork. Her eyes stayed fixed on the glass doors. David sighed, the weight of his daughter's gaze pressing on him harder than any corporate responsibility ever had. Finally, he pushed his plate aside and leaned closer to her. "You really want to share your food with her?" he asked softly. Emma nodded eagerly, her eyes shining. "Yes, Daddy, she needs it more than me." Something in her innocence cracked open a door David thought he had sealed shut long ago, the memory of his own childhood, of nights when he had gone to bed hungry, clutching his pillow tightly to quiet the rumble in his stomach. He had promised himself back then, that no one he loved would ever feel that way again. And here was his daughter, reminding him of the very thing he had almost forgotten, the importance of kindness, of remembering the world beyond his own. He called the waiter back. "Can you prepare another plate of spaghetti? And some bread rolls, please. Pack it up to go." The waiter raised an eyebrow but nodded politely. Emma's face lit up like the sunrise. She clapped her little hands softly, unable to hide her excitement. When the food was ready, David stood, taking the warm package in one hand and his daughter's small hand in the other. Together, they walked toward the doors. As they stepped outside, the chill of the evening brushed against their skin. The woman startled at their approach, her eyes wide with both fear and hope. "Here," David said gently, holding out the package. "We thought you might be hungry." The woman's lips trembled, she took the food slowly, as though afraid it might disappear. "I don't know what to say," she whispered, her voice rough from disuse. You don't have to say anything. Emma piped up, her smile bright and sincere, just eat. It's really yummy. For the first time that night, the woman's face softened, tears welled in her eyes as she sank onto the steps, clutching the food like treasure. She looked at Emma, then at David, and whispered a quiet, "Thank you." David felt something shift inside him, a quiet reminder that no matter how high he had climbed, he was still connected to the struggles of others, and that sometimes, it took the eyes of a child to see what adults had forgotten. They stood there for a few minutes, watching the woman eat slowly, savoring every bite as though it were the first real meal she had had in days. Emma squeezed her father's hand. "Daddy, yes sweetheart. Can we help her more? Not just tonight." David looked down at his daughter, her innocence shining against the backdrop of the bustling city. He didn't answer right away. The question was bigger than a meal, bigger than this moment. But in her small voice, he heard the echo of something powerful, the possibility of change, not just for the woman, but for themselves as well. "Maybe we can," he said finally. His voice steady, thoughtful. "Maybe we can do more than just share food." Emma grinned, satisfied with his answer, and leaned against his side. The night suddenly felt warmer, not because of the restaurant's glow, but because of the bond that had just deepened between father-daughter and a stranger who would no longer be invisible. The days that followed lingered in David's mind. At work, he found himself distracted, replaying Emma's words. "Can we help her more?" They echoed through the glass walls of his office louder than any corporate pitch. A week later, as he left the office late at night, he saw her again near the corner of the street, the same worn coat wrapped around her thin frame. This time, he didn't hesitate. "Sarah," she introduced herself quietly when he asked her name. She had once been an administrative assistant, but after her company downsized and her health faltered, she lost everything. David listened, not as a CEO, not as a man with influence, but as a fellow human being. And then, he extended something more than food, a chance, a small position at his company, a stepping stone back to dignity. 6 months later, Sarah no longer stood outside restaurants. She walked into David's office each morning with a smile, her life pieced back together, her hope renewed. Emma adored her, often stopping by to bring her drawings or share cookies. And David realized that night wasn't about charity, it was about rediscovering humanity, through the eyes of his little girl.